Hello, hi, welcome back to our week 5 part 3, which is we are going to learn about one thing which is called variables and data types. All right, so this is variables and this is data types. Now, this is just like extra context, right? Normally if you are learning programmings, right, the very first thing that you are learning is always variable. Doesn't really matter what programming language you are learning. If it is maybe now we are learning R, right? It doesn't really matter if it is Python, JavaScript, Java, C++, C sharp, PHP or whatsoever. Normally the very first thing that you are learning is basically and have always been about variables. All right, now what is variables? All right, so variable is like, oh dang, this is very difficult question actually. So what is variable? So variable is basically you give a name, or you are labeling a name, label, I would say a label that you give to a certain value. All right, so you have a custom label or custom name that you assign with a values. So that is what variable is. All right, so let's say I'll just like give you this analogy, right? So you can think of variables to something like this, maybe like a sticky note that you stuck in your desk, right? So you have these sticky notes that you put in your desk over here, right? And you grab a pen and you simply write the word maybe score, right? Score, and in here you write the value 10. Okay, maybe score A, right? Score A. And then you have another sticky note, which is you simply put maybe score B, right? And you have maybe 90. So variable is something like this. All right, so we have name and we have value. So we have score B, score A, and then we have values. All right, whenever you give these sticky notes to everyone else, right? Let's say you have score B, and let's say you are Mutahar, right? Mutahar give these sticky notes to maybe Tejas, right? Tejas. Okay, so let's say Mutahar gives this score B to Tejas, meaning that Tejas is now holding one sticky notes, which with the label of score B and the value of 90, right? So that is how variable actually looks like. We have a name and we have a value. All right, just a name that have a value or a value that assigned to a name, doesn't really matter. And the name can actually be anything as long as it is within the convention of convention of R. All right, so I'll just like provide you with many example over here, because this is like the most difficult things to actually explain. So let me just provide you one simple example. Let's say I wanted to create a variable, the custom name, right? Maybe score A is equals to 100. Oh, sorry, is equals to 100, right? So if I print score A right now, what's going to be happen is I'm going to get 100, right? The reason is because score A is 100. Now let's say if I wanted to create another name, another custom name, maybe score C is equivalent to 80, right? And if I print score C over here, what's going to be happen is I'm going to get 80. But now my question is, what if I print score E? Alright, if I print score E, what's going to be happen is we are going to get error because there is no score E over here. We only have score A and score C. Alright, so that is the reason we are going to have error, unless if I change from score, if I add a new one, which is score E is equivalent to maybe hundreds, right? Then now it's going to print 100 as well, because score E, the value is 100. So that is, logically, that is how variable work. You just give a name, custom name, and you assign to a values. All right, so that is how variable works. And this is the syntax of variable, which is we have a name over here, which is this one, the very first one on our left is our name, and this one is equal. All right, this one is equal, and this one is value. And value doesn't really have to be numeric like this one. Value can actually be text as well. So what does it mean by text? Is something like just now it was about score, right? How about if I wanted to put score A equivalent to 100? All right, then it can be this one as well. So if I print this one, if I print score A, then it can be hundreds, right? Which is it encapsulate with quotation. I will explain about this later on during the data type, but it is encapsulate with quotation. And then I can also make something like maybe winning is equals to false. All right, so this one, if I print, then it can be false. All right, this one is also can. Okay, the reason why this one doesn't really have to encapsulate with single or double quotation is because this one technically not a text. This one is actually something what we call as boolean, and for boolean we only have two values. All right, the first one is true and the second one is false. So I mean, this one is just like extra context. We are going to learn after this. All right, now let's moving forward to the next thing, which is we are going to learn what happened if we did not use variables, right? So in this case, we have a situation where the situation is we use one similar value, which is 60 for everything. I think this example is quite difficult for you to understand because we haven't learned about filter, mutate, count, sum, and etc. But the goal is each one of this one. Sorry, let me just change the color first. Sorry, the idea is each one of this one, right? Each one of this one is actually belong to a similar number, are supposedly to belong a similar number. So if I change to 50, all of these are supposedly to change to 50 as well. So if we are not using a variable without a name, meaning that without a variables, if you are not using a variable, it is gonna be look something like this. All right, this one are supposedly to be static values, but because of this one is not using a variables, then we have to repetitively put 60 in all of the lines. But if we use variable, right, you can just like assign this one time and then reuse it for every single things. Alright, so what is the advantage of using variables again? Let's say we wanted to change to 40, you only have to do it one time only. Alright, one time only in here. Alright, so that one is if you wanted to change the value from 60 to 40. Meanwhile, this one, let's say if you are not using variables, right, and you wanted to change from 60 to 40, what happened is you have to change this one, which is 1. You have to change this one as well, which is 2. You have to change this one as well, which is 3. You have to change this one as well, which is 4. And you have to change this one as well, which is 5. Alright, this one is just like the simplest example, but actually it is way more complex than this one. Sometimes the code is actually very long, not this short, and you have to find each one of this one, each one of the values of 60 to change one by one. Meanwhile, this one, you can just simply change the value in the variables only, and you can reuse it for many times. So that is the difference between using variables and not using variables. Alright, so now let's go to the next slide, which is each of the variables do have data, right? Which is based on our assign just now, which is something like this. But what we need to know is, after we have learned variable, right, we need to understand about something which is called data type, and it is related with type of data that the variable hold. Alright, so that is just like the simplest form of saying it. Now we have three basic one, which is the numeric, the character, and the logics. Alright, so what is numeric? Numeric is basically just a number. Alright, so let's say if we assign something like this, age is equivalent to 40, or height is equivalent to 170, right? This one are example of numeric, because you can see here this one is a number. Okay, how about characters? Alright, so how about characters? Characters is if the value is not numbers. So as example, right, class name is equivalent to tutorial 5, or maybe favorite color is equivalent to brown. and etc. Right? So this one is character, and again I want you to remember, if it is a character, right, it need to be encapsulated with single or double quotations. All right, so let's say if I change this one to brown, what happened is I am going to get error, all right, because brown is not found. So how can I fix this one is just like simply put double quotation and then run again. I don't have any error anymore, because what you need to keep in your mind, if it is a text or character, you need to encapsulate with single or double quotation. Now, the last one is logical, or sometimes we call as Boolean in many other programming language. So logical is basically it only have two different value, which is true or false. All right, so how can we define this one? Is something like this. As example, we have one variable which is lit, right, which the name of variable is lit, right? So how can we define, or how can we initialize with logical? Is basically we can just put variable name over here, and then we can put equals, and lastly is true. All right, so for true and false, which is for logical, right, you doesn't really have to put single or double quotation, because this one is a different data type than previous one, which is what, which is characters, and this one is a logical. So if I run this one, what going to be happen is we are not going to have any error, and if I print late, then we are going to get the results as well. All right, so there is three different what, different data types within this sorry, this is three basic data type within R.